Hey, Warrior Saints. Father Chris here. Welcome to our crucifixion live stream. Glad to have you lovely, beautiful people with us today. Christ is risen. I am joined this morning by beautiful Aaron Tobias. Welcome. Glad to have you with us.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. Everything good in your world?
So good. Couldn't be better. I'm so blessed.
All right. What are you working on?
What am I working on? This, Father Chris.
This.
Nothing else occupies my time.
I know. You're doing so
But
good.
it's great. Our church is expanding. It's wonderful to see. We have a brand new group of catechumens who are just coming in.
Yeah.
And so it's been fantastic.
I love it. Well, you're doing great work with them. This last group was more prepared than the previous. I mean, your work is doing great stuff. So keep it up, keep grinding.
Thank you. It's a blessing.
I wanted to, tell everyone we're having, we're going to do just a conversation. Probably it'll end up more like a monologue. Sorry for you, but we're going to talk about fatherhood and the crisis that we see out there. So maybe before I just start ranting and set the stage for us. I mean, what is it you see? What do you want to talk about? What do you what's the problem? What are we struggling with here?
Well, Father Chris, the problem is undeniable, and it's very clear that there is a crisis of fatherhood that has been happening for even generations in our country. 1 in 4 children in the United States are growing up without a father in the home. And to give you an idea of scale, that's about 18 million children in the United States. And so if you look at the statistics, this decline really started in the 1970s. A lot of people say that is related to divorce and it becoming more of a cultural norms and different laws that were changed during that time. What do you think is the reason for this crisis and this trend that we're seeing that's really disturbing?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure that divorce has a prominent role in that, because obviously if there's a divorce, very often people don't still live together once they divorce, right? So obviously there will be, even if it's perfectly, equitable in the amount of time that someone spends with each parent, a child of divorce, meaning that he or she will, only have 50% of the time where his or her father's in the home. And conversely, that's true with mom as well, right? And most of it, and I don't know the data on this, but it seems to me that most often and most of the time, the child spends the majority of his or her time with mom. So you can see that that's certainly got to be a huge factor. I don't know the data on that, but I'm sure I'm not wrong.
Yeah, we have it. It's about 22% of that group have the mother only in the home. And then another 5% have the father only in the one-parent household.
Really?
Yeah.
So the other more or less 85 or 80%, let's just say, the other 80% of children who are children of divorce are split between mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. They're like going back and forth.
Got it. And but 22% you said are
with mom only. So that's the majority of the one-parent household is mothers only for whatever reason. It could be divorce, it could be incarceration, it could be other factors.
Yeah.
Just walked out.
Yeah, well, for sure. Do you have any data on, prison, incarceration and that kind of stuff? I mean, is that there? I don't know if that's such a reach.
Well, in one-parent households without the father, about 85% of those who are in jail have that circumstance. And so those who end up in prison, about 85% of them do not have a father in the home.
All right.
So it's definitely a leading circumstance, maybe something that contributes to the problem. I'm sure there's other circumstances that are happening in their life. We can't look at everything in isolation, but that trend line is pretty strong and has been going on for many, many years.
Yeah. Any other data you see out there?
Oh, I have
data.
I have tons of data, Father Chris. Specifically with, even Gen Z, it's interesting. They're kind of straying away from marriage in general. So I'm wondering if some of these statistics have really soured their opinion on marriage and children, and maybe that's something that we can get into as well. And then also just, with the specific behavioral aspects, 85% of children without fathers in the house display some sort of behavioral disorder. So that could manifest in incarceration. It could also manifest in other ways, like their inability to connect with others or emote. So there's more going on than simply the extreme example, which would be going to prison, living a life of crime. Right. There's other issues that happen around being able to make stable connections, being able to have stable relationships, being confident in school. Even those who have a father in the home, they're much better. They get much better grades. They're much better in school, and they feel more confident. Right. So there's a lot of issues with not having that male presence.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not to say that everyone who is raised without a father will end up in jail, 85%. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that those who are in jail, 85% of them are shown to be without having raised without a father. Right? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Is that you understand that nuance? I mean, I was raised without a father, right? My father was killed when I was very young. And although I've been to jail, all right, to take someone communion. But I always say I've been to jail. I told my kids that. I've been to jail. I ain't afraid to go back. They're like, what? I'm like, all right. But, you know, my point in making that silly little joke is that just because we're raised without a father doesn't mean that we're, you know, that script has to be written, that the rest of our life is written in a negative way. It doesn't have to be. We can choose and decide to do. But look, I mean, I had moments, right? A lot of moments where in high school and college in particular, where, you know, I think that I don't know that having no dad at home was the reason, but I definitely used it as an excuse. So it gave me permission to do some things that I look back on in life and say, oh, I probably should have chosen differently.
Did you feel that it affected your home life or your emotional life at all?
You know, I don't know the answer to that simply because I'm far removed from it now. I mean, my father died when I was 7. So my mother did an excellent job, you know, at being both father and mother in the home. She handled both roles wonderfully. But yeah, I mean, I would be naive to say, no, it had nothing to do with it, in spite of how amazing my mom was. I mean, of course it had something to do with it. Like, I didn't have anyone to teach me about sex or girls or money or how to be a good God-fearing man in the sense of my dad, right? My dad wasn't there to do that. And so I made a lot of poor choices. So sure, I'm sure it had a lot to do with, I was angry too. You know, like I wanted to fight everybody. I did fight. Haram, I went to a Catholic school. I made one of the nuns cry. What a jerk. Not her, me. You know what I mean? I know I made a nun cry. Don't ask me how I did it. I don't remember. Sister Joan Marie. She's probably not even alive anymore. Haram. Anyways, so yeah, it definitely, I'm sure, had some impact on life. But I have stopped since, you know, I'm 53 now. So I've no longer let that be an excuse for the way I live my life. The anger and all that kind of stuff. Well, I didn't have a dad. Okay. That's part of it, right? I mean, just life is what it is. And I don't know. It's, if you want to say fate for me, I don't let fate write my script, right? Fate's a terrible writer. So at some point I decided to write my own script. And I acknowledge the loss of my father, but I don't let it guide my life. And I think that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because like it's, you know, fatherhood is so important. And before we get into my thoughts on it, like you can see, and I'm going to sound like a total chauvinist pig right now, but I don't care because I'm not wrong. I don't watch a lot of television. And I don't use social media. I don't do any of that kind of stuff, really, with very, very minimal frequency. But I started to notice, like, my bride has the TV on in the background. She's a noise girl. Like, she needs just that, you know, she didn't even watch what's on. But as it's back there, I started to notice there's a lot of crazy things happening in the commercials, in the advertising. One of them, again, here's the chauvinist part, but now we see the dads doing laundry and doing the dishes. And the mom is driving the family car with everyone in it. Now, those are not bad things. I help with dishes. I help her fold laundry. She won't let me touch the machines. Something I did. Anyways, but I'm helpful with that, right? And my wife can drive. She has a car. We gave her the license, you know, like, I mean, of course she can drive. But the statement that type of advertising, it's switching in our minds the traditional narrative. Does that make sense? And now, you know, the dad is emasculated in those cases. And the mom is now taking, you know, charge and leading. And again, not bad. My mom led. She had no husband, so she did it all. She did the laundry, the cooking, and the working, and the driving, all of it. It's not to say that a woman can't. The other part of it is when we go somewhere, meaning my bride and I always drive. I don't let her drive. She's a better driver than me. She's safe. She's less tickets on her records than I do. But I'm doing my best as husband to care for her and to take that from her. Does that make sense? So that whole, image is starting to, it's been changed. The other thing I see too in some of these shows is that often the dad in the story is a bumbling fool, right? The dad's kind of like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I noticed that growing up, even in Disney movies, the dad is always the villain, or he's absent or something.
Yeah.
He's always gone.
Yeah. And I think so. I mean, I don't want to be too, conspiratorial, but I mean, seriously, there's like an assault against the traditional family.
Well, my dad and I would even talk about it too.
What do you mean? Tell me.
Whenever I would watch those movies, we even noticed it together, and we would have a conversation about what is going on. Do you notice that the father is absent in every single movie? Why do you think that is? How does that make you feel? And it was just a conversation we had. There's no conclusion or lesson, except for just to point out that, I think the lesson he was teaching me was to point out that subversion and not let it sink in.
Good for him.
But also at the same time, what are you going to do? Because you can't control the media. You can only control what you watch.
Right.
And at some point as a father, that there's only so much control you can have.
Well, that's a really nice transition, because that's really what I think the solution to all of it is. Before we switch into this, but your dad taught you. That's that's the lesson. My wife works. Both of my girls, they better get jobs because I paid a lot of money for college. You know what I mean? So but the idea has shifted now that somehow being a homemaker, or whatever word we use today, a stay-at-home mom, and raising children, that somehow that's lesser. And that, there's the thing now, girl boss, right?
Or when moms introduce themselves as just a mom. I'm just a mom.
Yeah.
I don't have a career. I'm just a mom.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Take
away the just.
Absolutely.
I am a mom.
Absolutely. Because it's, to me, that is the highest of all callings, because you're influencing the next generation. But it's like you can see I'm just a mom, where, so they're shifting now into this girl boss narrative. And I think there's a lot of data out there too that shows that, women are not underpaid in comparison to men like they used to be. I don't know the exact statistics, and I'm sure there are still some women who for the same job get less money than their male counterparts. But I think that gap is, closing.
I would agree with you. I think that's less of a problem, and it's more so what has been taken out of the home done. Girls are going to college more frequently than men. They're graduating at higher rates.
Astoundingly higher rates.
Astounding. It's not a small gap. And also they are taking on more of a career outside of the home right away.
Right.
And so that's delaying their marriage time, just by age. They're waiting longer to get married. They're waiting longer to have kids. And so that's causing some of that, I guess, strain that you would see on the traditional family life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of that, there are some who want to choose that. Some women who want to, and that's fine. That's their right. It's not for you or I to tell anyone what they can do. But what I don't like is the assault against traditional family and values. And it is out there that it's somehow a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. And I never have once heard my wife say, I'm just a mom. My wife said, I raised lions. You know what I mean? We took that seriously. She did her parts, especially way better than I ever could have. I don't want to, I'm just of the mind, here's where my rant begins for the day. It's I am not of the opinion that we can let or should have. Let me say this. The assault against the traditional family with traditional roles is troublesome. And I think we have you started with a lot of data that shows, that breaking down. And again, some of it's divorce or death, whatever it may be, that led to no father in the home or just an abandonment, whatever. But we have the data to show that absence, that's a hole, that's a huge void. And the question is, and there's a resurgence now, right? There's even a thing where what they call trad moms, or no, trad
Trad
wives.
wives.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, what is that? When I learned that, I'm like, what's that even mean? But you can see people are looking for it because they recognize, not every woman who has a career is a bad mom. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that there is a large group of people who recognize the beauty and the strength of the traditional, family roles. And with that, it leads to really what I wanted to talk about today is that, okay, so then let's talk about what does it mean to be a father? If I am saying, which I am, fathers need to take their stuff seriously, and stay in the home and be crucifixional fathers to help raise the next generation and maybe even the generation beyond that. How do they do it, right? And one of the things we were just talking about a minute ago is that, well, we hear it out there. Everybody's got you just go to church and it'll solve everything. And I'm like, all right, well, church is good, clearly. I mean, I give my life to it. But I also know that just going to church doesn't solve the problem, right?
Right.
We have people in our community, who are amazing fathers. We also have some people in our community who are amazing men and not good fathers. And we also have some people that we've, encountered who are terrible fathers, right?
Right.
So, it's like just by saying I go to church doesn't mean that you're going to by default be the right Christian that you're supposed to be. Certainly, not coming to church is less advantageous. I get that, but it's not the magic fix, right?
It's not a magic fix. I think understanding the gospel and living it is more so the route that you want to go, and that's what we're always talking about on this podcast nonstop. We're giving ways and tips and tricks so we can live out the gospel. But my thought here too is, a lot of the reason I think why people are rethinking their religious affiliations, why people are turning back to the church. The Orthodox Church is growing and all churches are growing. Christianity is having a boom moment. And the Orthodox Church is interesting because it's younger in general. So about 60% of our population is under the age of 50. So the topic of motherhood and fatherhood and raising families is more important than ever for us to really understand and grasp. And so I'm curious, Father Chris, what are your thoughts in terms of how to be a great father, how to be present? And I think you have about six key categories and areas that you have outlined that we can go through today and talk about.
Yeah, I think so I have 5 things outlined. And the 6th is kind of like a bonus, but it's a thought. It's something I'm experimenting with in my own mind, in my own life with raising my children. And as in all things, this list is not certainly exhaustive, but to me they're key. They're really key elements, characteristics, traits that a man needs to have to be a good father. And they are all founded upon the foundation of a crucifixional life, meaning to be crucifixional is that in all that we do, we choose God's will ahead of my will, right? And that we sacrifice self for the sake of other. And I think that begins with the way you treat your wife, right? So, it seems that in order to be a father, there has to also be a mother, right? No man can have his own child, right? So it presupposes that there's a woman in the picture. And it's important. It's of essence, the relationship that the father has with the mother of the children, his wife, right? Everything that I'm about to tell you is purely about being didactic. It's to teach and train them. That's the point of why we go to church. You hope that you go to a church where it gives a good teaching on how to live. You hope, like with your dad, the way you were watching those shows, he took the time to say, Aaron, look, let's talk through it. And you're a wonderful human being, an amazing woman. And I'm sure that's what his role and involvement has got a lot to do with that. And so I think the first thing is that the way the father treats and speaks to his wife, their mother. Now I'm going to tell you some stories about my kids because, my bride and I always wanted to show them the way to be try to teach them what it means to be a woman by modeling their mother, and what kind of man to look for by, modeling their father. There was a time where they were young. I think they were like 4 and 6. And I'm a Semite, right? Like I'm very Semitic. I'm Lebanese, so by default. And then I was also raised in a Semitic-minded household. And I am formed in Scripture. And Scripture's mind is not Western in any way, shape, or form. It is a Semitic mind. So it's just how my brain defaults. I tease my bride about being an American. I mean, I'm an American citizen as well, obviously born here. But her mindset is more Western than mine. And one day the girls were fighting with her about something. I don't even remember. And I said, okay, let's see how my sweet little American wife handles it. And they were going back and forth. And I was like a little cringy. And then finally that's it. Let me help her with this one. And I screamed to the girls, sit down. And they sit down. And I looked at them and I said, who is that woman? And I pointed it at my bride. And they said, that's mommy. I said, that's not mommy. Who is that woman? Right? And it's our mom. I said, it's not your mom. Who is that woman? Right? We kept going back and forth. And at one point, finally I said, that's not your mother. That's my wife. Nobody talks to my wife like that. Now, what that did was to lay the foundation in their minds that woman will always be protected by this man from anyone and everything, including my own children. And it shows them, I mean, I don't mean to brag about it, but it was a fine moment in my life. I'm bragging about it, I guess, because I'm proud of that moment, because I said to them, by having that exchange, look, this woman will always be protected, right? And as to the best of my ability, someone's going to have to cut my head off before I stop fighting for her. And it showed them that's what they need to be looking for in their own relationships, right? Like that they are of value, they are worthy, they deserve respect, they deserve to be protected even from their children by their husbands one day if they marry. When they marry, they're going to marry. It was a power. Look, and even the little one said to me when she walked by, she said to me, my sweet Amelia, she says, Bob, I'm sorry I talked to mom. I mean, your wife, like that. You know what I mean? But it put it in her head, right? Like right away. And to me, that was a powerful lesson for them to learn, that they saw that Allison had value and worth in my mind and in my life. And I'm hoping that they will absorb that and translate that into their own lives. Now conversely, I don't have boys. So if I were to have done so with a boy, if I had a boy, it shows him the way he is supposed to protect his wife when he marries, right? So it's a powerful, powerful teaching tool. And we have to remember that as fathers, we teach first and foremost with the way we relate to our spouse, right? St. Paul even says that, right? In Ephesians chapter 5, I mean, the whole thing about, we read that, Ephesians chapter 5, verses 21 and following, in the Orthodox sacrament of marriage. Husbands and wives submit to one another as, to the Lord. The key verse for me, I think, is verse 24, 22, 3, 4, somewhere in there. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And, there's a lot of pushback sometimes because in the earlier verses it says, wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Why does he just have to love? Well, he doesn't just love. He loves the way Christ loved. How did Christ love?
Sacrificially.
He gave his life. Yeah, I mean, that's what St. Paul is saying. He, as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. He's talking about the cross. And he's saying, dude, pick up your cross. And the first one you are to be crucified for is your wife. The whole of the Christian life is a striving to imitatio Christi, right? Like to quote our Catholic brethren, it's to imitate Christ. And it's not Christ necessarily doing miraculous things or even Christ raised from the dead. That will happen for us by God's grace. Our duty in imitation of Christ is to carry the cross, right? The Lord says it himself in all the Gospels. You want to be with me, take up your own cross, right? Well, what does that mean to be crucifixional? It is the death of self for the sake of other. Death of my will for the sake of the other. Who's the first other in our lives? It's our bride. I mean, you wake up in the morning next to other and you go to sleep at the end of the day next to other. That's other number one that we're supposed to, and that exercise of living a crucifixional life within the context of your marriage is unto salvation, if we can do it.
Father Chris, do you think that mindset starts with when you're dating in terms of how you're going to treat her and how you are going to model that behavior in the home?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love when relationships dating relationships are playful. Like, we tease and but it should always be, built upon a foundation, build the edifice on respect. Let's just say it like that. I have always respected my brides, and we play. We're so funny right now. I mean, we're empty nesters and we're having a ball. I mean, not because we want our kids gone, but we just have worked hard to maintain that relationship that we had, and that love and that fun and that playfulness when we started dating. And we're, a little slower now because of the years, but we're trying to have that kind of fun. But it is always done still with the utmost of respect. And I think that's one of the things that, in looking for a spouse when you're dating, you want her to be beautiful, and you want her to be smart and all of those good things, but she's not a baby factory, right? I mean, producing children is certainly one thing that women can do that men cannot do. But when she becomes that, or, the proverbial piece of meat, just the hot wife, like, you've lost so much. You've left out so many beautiful blessings of another mind, another person that you can fight through life together with and that you can conquer together with. It's one of those things where it's got to be, that this is a person who you want to spend all of your time with, because beauty fades, right? I mean, my wife is still as stunning as she was, but that old saying of beauty fades. I mean, it's not even that they lose their beauty. It's that the good looking part, it may be top of your list at the beginning, but it finds its way down, especially over time.
Well, and especially as a woman too, you're looking for someone who's going to model that potential great fatherhood behavior.
Right.
So doing that up front when you're dating them with respect, and also talking about how you would raise your family, it seems like that is a powerful place to start. Yeah. Fatherhood doesn't necessarily just start with the birth of the child. Yeah. You're starting to build that behavior and that foundation for your marriage way ahead of that moment of birth.
Absolutely. And the flirtatious, fun, intimacy aspect is important, and you got to take it into the marriage with you. Like, my kids can't stand it. I flirt, and I do it on purpose to aggravate them. I don't know if they're going to see this. They're going to say, yeah, for sure. But I flirt with their mother right in front of them. I grab her, hug her, kiss her, like, ew, Baba, stop it. Get a room. They say that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, but I love her, and she's beautiful. And to me, as beautiful as she was the first time I ever saw her. And it's like, I kiss her and hug her. And I like I say, I do it to make them uncomfortable. But I said to them once, and they got it. This, again, goes back to that instructional part of it. Like, don't you ever find yourself with a man who doesn't love you as much as you see me loving your mother. And that's not for me to say, look at me, I'm such a good dad. It's for me to say, I'm doing my part to teach them what they need to be looking for in their own relationships, right? And that as a woman who will someday become a wife and one day, God willing, a mother, they deserve the same love and rapt attention that I try to give to my bride. They deserve it. Go get it. And don't settle for anything less. So for me, it's didactic. That's the whole point, is that we're trying to teach them, my girls, how it is to be a wife. And, I'm trying to be the best husband for them. Well, best husband for my bride, but for them to see what they need to be looking for.
And most of education is caught, not taught. And so having that model with their eyes visually and then follow up with the conversation, I think is a really powerful one too.
Before we transition into the next thought, I think this one's a hard one, but I hope the fellas listen to this. No porn. Like, come on, I mean, and it's easy for me to say, don't keep watching it. We realize that porn is a horrible monster, and it can become, neurochemistry. I mean, it's addictive.
Yeah. We've had episodes on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Deep. We went deep.
But it's, that's a betrayal of your bride. So for all those guys out there, believe me, I know that so many people struggle with it. I hear it in confession almost daily, so I'm not making light of it, but I am saying it's a battle worth fighting, and she deserves it, your bride. And I know that a lot of these guys look at it and they say, well, it's not like I'm going to cheat on my wife. Why is she so mad about it? And okay, good. I'm glad they're not going to cheat on their brides. Good. They shouldn't. But it is a betrayal for them, for the bride. it makes many of these gals who come to me in confession on the other side, although women use porn too now. Oh my goodness. But they come to me, I'm so angry with my husband because, he's watching porn. And so I push back to try to help them figure it out. I'm like, what's the big deal? It's just a bunch of negative pictures, which it is a big deal, but I'm pushing back in counsel for them to say, expose to themselves what their struggle is. It's like, he doesn't love me anymore, or he doesn't think I'm beautiful anymore, or it's like he's done the sin in his mind, which is a thing. I mean, once sin is not just an action, it can happen in here as well. So we have to realize the damage that it does to our beautiful brides, right?
Yeah. And I think that behavior is one to work on, again, even before you're married and before you have kids.
Yeah.
It's one to just eliminate from your life as quickly as possible if you're in that trap. And we know it's harder than just saying, no, I'm not doing this anymore. There's a bunch of neurochemistry going on. And we have a whole episode about that where we went deep into why do people fall into porn addiction? I mean, what are the reasons why? I mean, it's so easy, especially with all of our media, just basically regular television shows are basically pornographic now in a lot of ways. So setting that foundation of what you will watch even in normal media, and then also going into the actual act itself of kind of trying to figure out how to eliminate that from your life. We went into extreme detail on ways that you can. And
that's on this YouTube channel.
This, I'll link it below because I think it's a great resource because you went so deep into the neuroscience and also how you can start to try and get yourself out of that hole if you find yourself in it, and removing the shame too. I think that's a piece. Obviously it is shameful, but we all sin. Yeah. And I think that is something that we can't be judging another person for their sins.
No. But we don't
log in your eye, my log's bigger, that sort of thing. It's
we don't have to submit to it.
No, but we need to have that power moment. You keep talking about this power moment. I think it's so amazing.
Well, thank you.
Visual, because it really gives you that moment to take the reins.
Yeah, thank God. I before we go into the next point, I mean, with this stuff that you're going to link it, on our YouTube channel, but that's why we put together the Warrior Saints Academy. If you go to warriorsaints.org, I know our people that we have online in the academy a 6-part battle plan. And part of that is, though not specifically, dedicated to, porn, it's definitely an element of becoming a better man and a better woman. I mean, to mastery, and we'll see it here. I'm going to talk about it in just a moment, about conquering yourself. And that means, the sins that go with it. So, I mean, I would say to people, who are struggling with that stuff, this is not what this chat is about, but like, go there and look at it. We're going to help you. And we're also producing, as we're coming up in the fall, a summit, where people can actually come and be with us physically here where we live. And the summit we're calling Winning the War Within, which is going to directly, position people and pit them against the war within. This is where the war resides, So
I'm really excited about that.
I am
It's going to be a chance to work through all this stuff in person as well.
Number 2, I think the Father provides. And, he's conquering the world in front of him, and he's providing for his family. And look, I know that, I'm going to sound like a total jerk, but I don't care because I love my people enough that I got to say it. Someone's got to say it to them. It is not okay for dudes to live in mom's basement watching porn, playing video games with no future and no hope. That's not good, right? I mean, at no point can I say that that's a good thing. There are many men who are out there fighting. I'm going to tell you a story. We got a guy here. I hope I don't embarrass him, but I am so proud of this guy. He's losing his mind, but he is grinding, right? Because he's married, has children, young newborns, has a home, has bought a second home to use as, supplemental income to help his family, works a full-time job, and then he works at night at a gig, his what he calls his side hustle, and I mean, I love him. He's losing his mind. We had a convo about that too. I'm like, maybe you need to slow down, but he's like, Father, I got to do this. What if something happens to me? Right. Yeah. And that's really what it's all about. Just, to settle and not be able to provide for your family is, to me, unacceptable. And I realize that many of us have and need 2 incomes. My wife works now too, so to be sure, right? but it's not okay for that to be okay. That needs to be something that we need to be able to look beyond and transform it, transcend that. Look, one of the greatest TV shows I ever watched. I love it. And I don't know where it started. I feel like it was a National Geographic type of thing. I don't know, but it's now, I think, on Netflix. It's called Vikings, and it's the story, late 700 or 800. I don't remember the setting of Ragnar Lothbrok. He's the hero of the story, and Ragnar is, a Viking, and the opening scene, they're in a battle, like they're killing people, and but it's a story of Ragnar's, his life, his leadership, his journey, where he goes to explore new lands, and he's creative in his leadership. He becomes corrupted in many moments, but in the opening scene, the very first episode, he's on his way to what they call the Thing, which basically I understand it to be like the town hall meeting, where the earl of their tribe is deciding where they're going to raid in the summer. And Ragnar, it's a 2-day journey, but he takes his son Bjorn with him, who's 12. And Bjorn is going to get his arm ring, right? That's when he becomes a man. And so on this 2-day journey, they have to sleep and camp out in the forest one night because, it takes 2 days to get there. So watch this clip, and then I'll talk about it a little bit.
Are you ready to receive your arm ring and become a man?
Yes.
And what does a man do?
He fights.
And?
He looks after his family.
That's right. Could you look after our family?
What do you mean? You look after us.
Say I wasn't there. I have a big decision to make. It may change many things. Now go to sleep. You have a big day tomorrow.
I mean, I love that, right? I mean, he says to his son, what does a man do? And the answer that Bjorn says, he fights. And, in that context, obviously it means with the sword. Our conquering today is not necessarily that, we're fighting with the sword and killing other people. But we have to conquer the world. I mean, that's what he was doing, right? What did the Vikings do? Why did they raid? Probably they say it was in their blood, but they went to get booty so that they could bring it back and afford to feed their family, right? Like they were, yes, they wanted to expand, their territory and land. And I'm sure power was part of it. We want to conquer and all that kind of stuff and just be known as the baddest man in town. But the point, of fighting as I see it today is no longer with shield and sword, but it is that we are leaving a mark in the world, that we're doing the very best that we can do. And I don't care what that means. That to me is not measured on your bank account. The measurement for conquering is that you have done the very best you can do wherever it is you are. And again, I don't mean to speak about myself, but I mean, I give more than I'm physically able to give and mentally able to give to help our parish community thrive, to give the academy everything that I've got. I mean, it's growing. Thanks be to God. And people keep saying to me, Father, we're so grateful you said. I'm like, it makes my day. Like I say, that reward is greater than anything monetary for me, is to know that we might have touched one soul in one life.
Me too. It keeps me going as well. And your leadership is phenomenal at the academy. But I think even that one person saying, I watched it on my lunch hour, and I've started watching these videos on my lunch hour, and I'm starting to understand what the gospel is and how to apply it to my life. Like, I mean, that's all we need. It's just one person saying that to keep us going. And they do, and it's wonderful. But it's interesting, this idea of conquering. Yeah. And, in that clip, it's very physical. It's all about survival. And in that moment, you see the mindset change in the boy when he is realizing, oh, I'm going to have to one day take care of a family, right, whether it's my current family or a future family.
Right.
A conversation just is very striking to me. And I don't know if that's even a conversation that happens these days. I don't even know if we have a rite of passage like that. I don't know what that would be. What do you think?
I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, because going to the Thing in the clip, when they were going to the council, he would get his arm ring, young Bjorn, and it was his rite of passage, becoming a man. And it goes back to my overarching thesis for this. A father has to teach. And this is exactly what Ragnar was doing, was teaching his son. And I think, I leave that for our fathers out there, or those who are aspiring to be fathers, that, you've got to teach them, especially your boys, work ethic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how much lazy sloth do we see out there where people are willing just to accept what comes and to take the mediocre? And that's, that's fine for some. But for those who aspire to be warrior saints, mediocre is not okay. We don't tolerate that. We work beyond. I mean, we don't accept okay, right? Or to be normal. You heard me say this a million times. Normal is a setting on your dishwasher. Fine. I'm not interested in that, right? I'm looking to be exceptional. And you know what? You cannot expect that a young man, even or your young daughters, will be exceptional if you don't teach them that that's even a possibility, right? Like, look, and it doesn't apply just to men. My girls are ferocious. We tried hard. I raised lions, right? They are sweet. They're compassionate. They're loving. They will give the shirt off their back for someone in need, but don't meet them alone in a dark alley and piss them off. I'm telling you, they will cut your heart out and eat it before you've even had time to hit the floor, because they are strong, and they are ferocious. And we've tried to give that to them. They are conquering in their own rights. Well, I'll talk more about that when both of them now are in college. But I mean, when, coming up, we'll talk more about it. But a man has to go out and fight. He cannot just take what's given.
I think he also has to know what is worth the fight. And that's actually something we talked about in the last episode between you, me, and Deacon Greg, was when is it appropriate to start fighting? How do you know what is worth fighting for? How do you know when to fight? And when you choose to fight for something, how do you go about displaying that?
Yeah.
So how do you regulate your emotions? How do you work the room?
Yeah, when I say, so that's a great conversation, but I think a separate convo, because I'm not talking about, you're talking about like conflict resolution and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and this idea of having discipline over your life, being able to use that fire that might be inside of you to.
So when I talk about fighting, what I mean is, in this context and in this conversation, is to fight to conquer. And by that I mean the world around you. And I don't mean that as a king, so I own all this land. I'm talking about things like work ethic. I'm talking about things like producing fruit, leaving a legacy, leaving a mark. But I'm also talking about the first thing that a father needs to conquer is himself. And I was coming to it. I'm glad you kind of steered us there, because, we have to be, as fathers, in charge of our emotions. If every time a child pisses you off, you fly off the handle, what are you teaching? That you're a spaz and you have no control over your emotions, right? And so then why would they have control over their emotions, right? And that's hard because like I said earlier, I'm Lebanese. We are by default emotional, right? We're just hot-blooded. Well, I'm trying and have been trying throughout as long as I can remember to make sure that my emotions are in check and that I don't let someone else's silly remarks instigate my silly response, right? So that's where I'm talking about discipline. I mean, it's having a discipline over your own disposition, right? Which is interesting too, by the way, discipline, because we're not talking about, look, sometimes you have to discipline your children. I'm not talking about beating them senseless. That's called abuse, right? Discipline is didactic. In fact, the word in Latin, discipline, where it gets its root, means a disciple, to teach, or the noun is the one who is taught, right? So, I mean, discipline is teaching and instruction, and those instructions are unto life. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so as fathers, when we discipline our children, over the years, I've had to discipline my daughters, rarely, but it's never been abusive. It's always didactic. And rarely has it even been, with a spanking. I mean, I think I spanked the oldest one once and the little one twice or whatever, I was trying hard to teach them. However, my style, I don't even need to go into it, but, I was giving them instruction, and that included discipline, where it was like, all right, look, if you do this, then this, or you cannot do that, or, whatever type of, but it's always didactic, teaching, helping them understand the way to live life as a strong, ferocious young woman. So, I mean, I think that, this point about Ragnar being, a man and father goes out and fights, it is that he fights against the world and he fights against himself. That's the first monster. Boy, that's the harder fight, right?
Especially in that show. I mean, he is struggling. He is definitely fighting against all sorts of things in himself.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch just even from that perspective. I actually hadn't thought of that before.
It's a great show. I mean, he becomes corrupt. There's even that scene where he's with the King of England or of Wessex. Oh my God, what was his name? Not Athelstan. Athelstan's their buddy, but anyways, the king, played by Linus Roach. There's such a good show. He's like, "Am I corrupt?" He's like, "Yes." And he looks at Ragnar and says, "Are you corrupt?" He says, "Oh yes." They definitely, But so here's the funny part. In episode, I think 1 of season 3, I think it's 3-1, because then the corruption comes from the power that they're all chasing. Ragnar is on top of like the mountain with his son, now fully grown Bjorn, and he says, "Look," Ragnar says, "Look down." They look at their town, and he says, "What do you see?" And he says, "Power, the sun." And Ragnar says something to the effect, which I'm totally going to steal this line because it's fabulous. Power is given to those who are prepared to stoop low enough to pick it up. Wow. I know. I was like, there's some great quips in there. And that to me was a great line. It's basically him saying, all right, you want power? You got to stoop. Well, he eventually becomes corrupt because he wanted the power. I mean, you could just see it. It's a fabulous show. Anyways, I guess that second we can beat that horse,
So that actually gets to a great point. Even that scene. What are we teaching our kids? If we're supposed to be teachers, what are we teaching them?
Yeah. That, again, sorry to keep driving back towards the academy, but we have all that stuff there that I think you teach first and foremost around the table.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, we'll talk about it, and the conversation that you have at the table. So it's not like, how was school? Tell me about your day. Like those things are nice. And sometimes we have to do that, but that's an opportunity where you really can teach. You should take advantage of the table. I call the tables being sacred. For us in our home, it is sacred space. And we would have questions. We would ask them difficult things. In fact, so on the Academy website, I don't know where there's a box, right, where they can sign up. We have a list of, I don't even know how many questions.
It's about 78 questions, and they're all organized by topic.
Yeah.
So you can kind of decide what you want to talk about that day at the
table.
So
it's a question starter, like in other words. So they click the link, whatever, and we'll send them that list that we've used over the years of, difficult questions. Like some are, who's your favorite superhero and why? But others are what are you reading? What are you working on?
Well, in the last episode, you utilized some of those for our round table, and it was a really great discussion.
Right.
It was really fun.
Yeah. So those are, the table is an opportunity, and it's got to be all like the cliche stuff. No phones, no TV on, put that stuff away. The table is sacred because it's there that I did my best teaching for my girls. And we would fight and by that I mean about ideas as a family, like, very difficult topics. We weren't always talking just about, how was school. Those things came up, to be sure. And, their friend, upset them, or there was a boy there, we talked about that stuff, but we used it as a playground, a battleground for ideas. And that helped them formulate their own thought. Most people, find great benefit from being able to talk about their ideas out loud. Right? I'm definitely one. I definitely speak to think. I say that all the time. Even as we are filming this, I'm formulating my thoughts just by saying all these, these words. And so it gave them an opportunity to speak and to think. And rather than me say to them, no, you're wrong, I would say, well, tell me why you think that. Or what are the upsides or the downsides of that particular thought? And it would enable them to have an opportunity to make the argument out loud themselves. And sometimes them hearing that argument would bolster it in their minds or refute it in their minds. But having that opportunity to do so is precious. Ultimately.
Why the table?
Well, you're all together and TV's not on. The table is sacred. I mean, the table is the heart, the light. It's the heart of the home. It's where bread is broken, and breaking bread together, as we do in the Orthodox Church Holy Communion. I mean, that's what unifies all of us. It happens around the table. When you can eat together, it's the place where all other things stop. If you design your environment as such, i.e. no TV, no phones, It's where everything else, the world around, comes to a screeching halt. And there it is just the unity of the family together. And this is why this whole thing about fatherhood, it's so important that the father's there for this, because their mother, would laugh with them in my home, would laugh with them and tease them, and they her. But I brought a different perspective. I had 3 women in my house. They needed some male perspective. As corrupt as it may have been sometimes, they needed that, right? So that they could see the other side, It's a sacred space, the table. And the content of what we would teach was life. We taught things about like money and budgeting and jobs and boys and, their own relationships, as I've been saying, how to be a good wife and how to find the right husband, how to raise their children, how to deal with people who are annoying, how to, to be women of faith, and all on and on and on it went. But the heart of what we taught them was crucifixional living, the gospel, in Psalm 78. So we are told, can I read it? Let me read some of Psalm 78 it's a long psalm, so I'll just read a couple of the opening verses. But give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and known, that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders which he has wrought. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. There's a lot going on there, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that the Bible says that. And also now we start to see it playing out in real life, because I actually have some statistics from the CDC that talk about when children have engaged fathers.
Yeah.
Specifically, they say who played with them, who regularly ate meals with them, and regularly helped them, get ready for school and things like that. They all show more positive outcomes.
Huh.
So that idea of being at the table, regularly talking with your kids about their day, regularly helping them to learn. It's, of course, wisdom that we just heard, but also it does play out in real life as something that is a success model.
Yeah. It's interesting the way the psalmist uses this psalm, or the way his thought in it, in that, our fathers have taught us, right? So, he's just laying it down there, and there's a lot there. I'll spare the exegesis, but they're talking about the fathers of old and, other generations. But the thesis is that the father gives it to the children. And in one of those verses, I forgot which one, I think it's in verse 6, that the coming generation might know them, to those yet unborn. And so what happens, there's a great story in the book of Joshua. So towards the end, I think it's chapter 22 or 23, and it ends in chapter 24. So it's right near the end, where the tribes on the other side of the river, Reuben and half tribe of Manasseh, they're not part of the rest of the tribes. And Gad, sorry, I think it's Gad. Anyways, there's like 2.5 tribes. The whole thing is no altars, no other gods. You worship one God, and we worship him in this location. So they build an altar over there. And everyone goes, oh, we got to go kill them. These are their cousins. So they all go over there, and they're like, what are you doing? And the response, you know that you can't do this. The response was amazing. They said, look, we know, and we're not going to worship on this altar, but we build it to mimic the altar in the promised land, so that when our children are gone and your children are gone, the next generations will know that we are connected to them, and your children won't look at our children and say, oh, you have no part in us. Right. And so it pleased everyone, and they said, great. And they went back about their way. But the statement that I see there is like, he's like, look, the next generation will have no idea unless you teach them. Right. How would they know? How would they know unless you teach them? And it's the same thing for our children. Right. When my dad died, I'm writing about it in my next book, is that like nobody taught me about girls and sex and making money and how to be a good husband or be a good God-fearing man. I had to figure that stuff out on my own, and I made some good decisions, and I made some not good decisions, right? But I have since learned from that, you better give that to your girls, right? Because how would they know? And the assumption is that a mind, well, they'll just figure it out, right? Well, osmosis is dangerous, right? Because what are we osmosising? Our phones and social media. You know this, right? And all the crap that they're consuming. And so it's our duty to teach them something and to show them that at least there is an alternative to what they're seeing, stuffed down their throats out there in the world. I don't know how else to emphasize that, right? Like, I mean, they will not know if you don't teach.
And you have to have that backbone of what you're going to teach, which should come directly from the gospel. I'm picking up from you. It's kind of what you're saying is look at the Bible to see what is worth teaching.
Yeah. Well, I was saving that to the end. No, I was, because it is. So what is the real content? I mean, yes, we got to teach them about life and jobs and careers and marriages and all that stuff. But the ultimate content, the highest content, is the gospel. And that's what he says at the end of that section we read, is that they might know the law of God and know his commandments. And so that they will know. I mean, how will they know the faith if we don't teach it to them? And look, let me give this other one. I know this is a lot of the fellas out there watching it. Well, I teach them to love God. Okay. And what do you do on Sunday mornings? You go to church? Many of our men do. Many don't. Well, Father, it's the only day I have to take off. What? Are you kidding me? Just the only day you have to take off? Who said you get to take a day off? Right? Fatherhood doesn't rest. I'm not a father on Tuesday, but not on Wednesday, and then resume on Thursday. There's no rest. You don't stop being a father. To me, that's horse stuff. You know what I mean? And it's lazy. It's excuse making, and it's unacceptable. It's mediocre at the very best. Your fatherhood can end when you die. That's all. Right? And so, get out of, look, nobody always wants to go to church. I don't always want to go to church. I'm being honest. If I'm confessing it publicly, like some mornings I'm tired, man. We work hard. We work our fingers to the bone, and I don't want to go to church. I just want to sleep in bed. It's warm. You know what I mean? But I go. And look, as a sign of that, I taught my children, I didn't raise my girls to be PKs. You know what that means? PKs, priest kids. I raised them to be good Orthodox Christian women. And now both of them go to church in spite of us. They're in college in, two different ends of the country, and they both go without us. And we didn't ask them to go. And I just assumed, I'm like, they're not going to go. I told my wife, she's like, they're going to go. I'm like, they won't watch. They go. And they don't go because we ride them or tell them. It's because we taught them that's what we do, right? Well, the kids don't always want to go to church. And I mean, I didn't always want to go to church. I still, as you just said, I don't always want to go to church. But we always went to church because that's what we did, right? And so, I know for sure Deacon Greg didn't have a choice. He had to go to church every Sunday with his dad was a priest, now a bishop, Deacon Greg, I think, was shoveling snow when he was, almost in utero, right? He was working as a because his dad went to church. It's what we do. Now, Deacon Greg and I, we go to church. Look, I'm going to tell you another story. My grandparents raised my mom and her two brothers in a small town on the California border of Mexico, and in Imperial Valley, I think that's what it's called. Calexico's the town. And they were 100 miles from the cathedral, 100. They went every Sunday, 100 miles each way. And they went into Los Angeles every Sunday with those kids. And now, my mother raised a priest and an active, my sister, an active, Orthodox Christian. My other uncle, the baby one, is a priest himself. And the other one, the older brother, is extremely involved in the church. I mean, you know what I mean? And it's not boastful. It's just simply to say that's what my grandparents put in them, right? They lived that life. They did the business, and mostly probably driven by my grandfather, right? God rest his soul. Anyways, that kind of stuff to me it's not okay to say, well, you get your butt up and you go to church. Being in church is where it all goes down, and your kids are worth it. Yeah. They're worth that effort, right? I mean, if you love them. So I don't know. I would just say it again. The Father teaches all the things of life, how to do things crucifixionally. And I think the majority of it happens around the table. So do it around the table. And again, visit warriorsaints.org, wherever it is on the website. Where is it? Do you know where?
It's on the homepage.
On the homepage.
So you can't miss it. And the questions are phenomenal.
So just sign up, whatever, click it, whatever. And we'll send you that starters question. Take advantage of the table. It's fun.
And you've collected those questions over time. This is something you were already doing on your own with your wife, and you kind of collected them tested them out.
Yeah. Some of them, like I say, are silly. Some of them are really, they're really fun. But they just make you think. So I don't know. Take advantage of those moments. Teach. And that interesting, that part about the table leads to another, what I consider. So the next, topic of convo, if you will, is that fathers have to learn and realize they are the sole source of authority. That doesn't mean that I'm the boss of my house and everything I say goes, and my woman, she has no mind, it's not how it works. And anyone who knows my bride knows she's strong, and my girls are also strong, and my wife has authority, but I am the sole source of authority. Let me tell you what I mean by that, because I think it's crucial. Because it's didactic, and ultimately it is the most important didactic, to teach them about how they are to be with God. All right, let me tell you what I mean. So I'm a Semite, right? I am ethnically Lebanese. I was raised in that kind of environment in my home. I'll explain how my house works. It is better or worse than the Western mind, I don't know, but very different, right? In the Western mind, it's all about individualism. Ultimately, the sin of Adam and Eve, right? As we'll see in a moment. But in a Semitic household, it is the pater familias, the father of the house, and it is his word that is law. So here's how it works. In my house, it's my house. For heaven's sakes, it's in my name. You go to county and look it up, the deed's going to show my name. I got to pay the bills, right? Mm-hmm. I'm responsible for it. Something breaks, I got to fix it, right? It's my house. My wife cooks my bread to feed my children around my table, right? So that's just kind of how it works. In that house, I'm number one, and there is my family, all right? Now, that doesn't mean that my wife is some mousy little thing. Like, for example, we decided together, this is real, that the children, excuse me, she said to me, babe, look, I want to make sure that we have a rule in the house that they eat dinner before dessert. This way we know they've gotten healthy food into them, and hopefully they'll be full and they won't want ice cream, right? But we're not going to let them eat ice cream or Doritos before dinner. I said, you know what, baby, I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's put it, you know what I mean? So I deferred to her wisdom on that. And I said to the girls, here's the rule. Now, here's how it works. Let's just say that it's a holiday and my father comes to visit, and he takes one step over the threshold. It's his house, right? He's now the pater familias. He's the old man of the clan. And, I am not now demoted to number two. I become not number one. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because it's his rule. And he would say, kids, come here. How about we have some ice cream before dinner? Well, when he does that, we say, we'll start from tomorrow, right? Now, you can see how very differently in a Western mind, the American daughter-in-law might say, oh, no, we don't do that here. And you say that to a Semite, he will leave. And he might not ever come back, right? That's a real thing. If I go into my girls' houses one day when they're married with their kids and their husband says something to me, I'm son, I'm out the door. It just doesn't work like that. It may not, I'm not saying this is a better way, but I am saying it is a Semitic way, and Scripture is Semitic. The mind of Scripture is not Western. No matter what anybody tries to tell you, don't buy that, right? It is a Semitic mind. And so the point in saying that the father needs to be the sole source of authority is because it teaches them that the ultimate father is not Father Chris or my father or my grandfather, the Lord God himself. And you can see, it's that battle for recognizing whose word is law. And it teaches them that God's word is law. So let's go to Genesis chapter 2, right? So in the creation account, God creates the man and he puts him in the garden and so on. And in chapter 2, verse 15, he gives him a commandment. No, that's 16. In 15, he puts him in the garden and says, you got business to do. You got to serve and keep this garden. The ground really is what he's referring to. And then in verse 16, I don't know if we have that up there, but it says that he gave a commandment. Do whatever you want to do. The tree of life is in here, baby. Eat. Just don't touch the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you do, you will die, right? And there's no reason given. It's just like this is the Father's life-giving commandment. And of course, we know the rest of the story. The man, doesn't like the animals that God made to be his helpers. So he takes some of himself and he makes more of himself. I mean, it's the birth of egos, that whole thing. It's not about a woman and marriage. It's not what it's about. And you can see it because in the very next section, I mean, immediately after this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, right? What happens? The serpent tempts him, tempts her first. And she says, what? Yeah, we can eat anything we want, just not that tree. Don't worry about it. Listen, for the Lord knows that if you eat from that tree, you will become like God, right? I mean, you can see there, that is saying that temptation is tempting the ego to be individual. It's my choice. It's my decision. I get to do what I want and I will be God, for heaven's sakes. Forget the Lord God and his commandments. I'm going to do what I want to do. I mean, that has to be, and that's, I mean, that message is peddled to us in the West all over the place, right? That's the virus of Plato,
Yeah.
right?
You do you.
Yeah, you do you. I mean, we see that, like that's the virus that we're all fighting. And the Semitic mind abolishes that because in Scripture, there's only one I, God, and everybody else. And that includes the king.
You've described that before as the divine because I said so.
Yeah. I mean, but it's telling the point of that. And you can see it in Genesis chapter 2 when God gives the commandment, don't touch that tree. If you do, you will die. Not I'm going to kill you and punish you. But it's very clear. My commandments lead to life. Do them. Transgressing them leads to death. Don't do them. And that's exactly what happens. They break his commandment because they want to be like God, and they eventually get kicked out of the garden, and they can't get back in, and there's an angel with a flaming sword to keep them out, and they return to the dust.
Do you think you have to earn this authority, though? Yes, it's your house. Yes, it's your family. But are there actions that you need to exhibit in order to kind of earn that authority and not just be like, because I'm the boss?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for sure. It is okay to say I'm the boss, but I think the less you do that, the better off you'll be. And, my girls know very clearly that I'm the boss in the house, even still. And they're both legal adults now. And they treat me with such beautiful deference and respect because I think they know that I have given blood for them. And I think they know that all that I'm doing is to teach them to be not good, but great women. And so, yes, there's definitely an element of respect that is earned and earned, right? Like there's that whole scene now where I wish we had this clip, from Game of Thrones. I forgot what season. Was it 4, Deacon Greg? Anyways, the king is a punk boy. He's like, 15. King Joffrey Baratheon. And they're having a meeting, and he comes in screaming and yelling. He's like, tell me. They're like, no, don't worry, your grace will forget it. Don't worry about it. Like his grandfather was dismissing him. He says, you have to tell me I'm the king. And the old man says to him, any king who has to remind someone that he's the king is no king at all. Right? I mean, it's a great line.
That's a good example.
Yeah, totally. Then we're talking about Game of Thrones in relation to Genesis, but it's a great image. And so if we as fathers have to I'm the dad, well then, at some point you have to put up. They have to see it. They got to know that you are what you say you are.
Well, and I think that the steps that you have outlined help lead up to that moment of having that authority and that respect and that clout.
Thank God. Yeah. I mean, it's and it should all be motivated and driven by love. Like, I don't need to tell my kids that I'm the boss because I have a need to lord myself over little girls. I want them to know it's because I love them. Right? And that's earned. That's earned. For sure. Through action. Through words and through action, And they have been, as I'm very blessed beyond my deserving, to have those beautiful women. Most of it comes from their mother's hard work. I know that. But I have done my part to the best of my ability. And, it's being that source of authority is not for the sake of my ego and my need to be over someone. It is didactic, like I've been saying all the way through, to show them that they are not individuals, at least in relation to God, that they are not number one. They're just everybody else. And with that, then hopefully there's an opportunity for them to do the Lord's will in their own lives. And that's what if I could give them anything, that's the one thing I would give them, is that in their lives, they are crucifixional. And I think they are. I mean, I'm biased, obviously. And so that when we talk, even now, the girls and I, it's always teaching. It's funny. Like the last point I lead to is that Fathers need to, boys, you better take this one. This is gold. A father is a fixer, not a friend.
That's true.
Right? And I always get this, why my kids, I need to be friends with my kids. Are you kidding me? Like, that's weak. That's mediocre, right? I'm not friends with my kids. I'm their dad. For heaven's sakes, they have a bunch of friends. They have one father. And if I don't do that, now that doesn't mean that we don't have great relationships and that we're not even friendly. And I even call them sometimes to take their advice because they're smart more than I. But I am at no point would either one of them ever classify me as their friend. And they don't want me to be their friend. They need me to be their dad, right? And I've noticed it's really interesting too. They call almost on a daily basis. They call their mother and they talk, and I listen to the conversations. And sometimes if they FaceTime, I'll stick my face in, like, hey baby, how you doing? And all that kind of stuff. And hey Baba, and I miss you, beautiful things. But they're just talking. Sometimes they're venting about their needs or their complaints about a course or whatever. They don't call me very often. And when they do, they need something fixed. And you know what? That does not bug me. Like, sometimes I hear these soft, girly men. Sorry. My girls and my kids, they don't call me. And I love it when my kids don't call me. True. Not because I don't like talking. Okay. It means that they are out there conquering their own world. I have trained them and raised them to the best of my ability to be ferocious, God-fearing women and go get some. Yeah. And so when they're not calling me, it means they're out there going get some.
That's so funny you say that, because I called my dad yesterday and he was like, what's going on? Why are you calling me? I said, well, just to talk, because it has been a while. And he said, he was shocked. He was like, what?
Yeah.
Just to talk?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. But yeah, I think that idea of him being the fixer is true. Yeah. It plays out.
I mean, Daddy
You're onto something.
Yeah, he's your first hero, right?
Yeah.
And, he has saved you throughout life all the way through. So men have to be that. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying that we don't talk just for the sake of talking. My girls both call me, now with some frequency, just checking in. My little one, not little, but she's the younger of the two, has from her college campus to her sorority house, it's like a 1.5 mile walk, whatever it is. She'll call because she's walking and she's just, talking. But here's an interesting thing. Sometimes she's alone. And the neighborhood is not always the safest where the school is. And so she's on the phone with dad because, let's be honest, I'm fixing something even in that moment. Mm-hmm. It's keeping her safe, giving her that presence, that feeling of the protector presence around her while she walks home, by herself sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The older one will call just to be like, Baba, just checking on you. How's it going? She starts with the small talk, but then invariably the conversation leads to this philosophy class that she's taking where she wants to duke it out. She wants to fix the ideas, right? She's working, you know what I mean? So it's, I guess all of this rambling is to say for the fellas as fathers, don't get soft. Like, if you want to talk to the kid, you miss him, call them. But the truth of it is, don't be needy that I need my kids to call me. Like, if you've done your work properly, raising them, they're not going to call you. Right. I know it sounds harsh, but see, that's a Semite. Americans can't think like that. The Westerners don't have it, but that's a Semitic mind. But it means, it gives me the greatest joy because I've done something good by God's grace with those women, and they're crushing it. I love it. It certainly makes me happy when I talk to them, but I don't need it. The other thing is about talking about friendship. Like, I want to be friends with my kids. All right, wait, stop for 1 second about that. I have 2 daughters. There was a time where Barbie was a very influential person in our home. I have no interest in that influence, nor that person, nor those dolls, right? Like, I'm going to be friends with someone who wants to play with Barbies. Like, what I mean by that, I certainly played Barbie dress up with them. Like, we would dress I did all of those things. But they're not my friends. They're my children, right? You're my friend. Craig and Christian are my friends. We talk about things that we're all interested in, right? Like, I'm not interested in Barbie. It doesn't mean I don't talk with them about it or play with them, but we're not friends, right? And that's okay. It's okay to realize that our interests and our friendships are not aligned with small people.
Well, and the second you go into a friendship zone, you're giving up that authority and
absolutely.
You're also giving up that role as a mentor and teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the point, I'm so glad you said it.
It's completely gone.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said it, E, because that is the father's role. as we've been saying all the way through, it's to teach. That's role number one, is to teach. And you can't in any way jeopardize that. They deserve your best, and you can't jeopardize your best because you have this weird need to be a buddy with your kid. Don't lose it.
It also models that crucifixional behavior, because is Christ really our best friend?
No. I mean,
Right. Some
yeah, you're
groups
on the
out
beach.
there will say you're on the beach,
2 footprints.
footprints,
I
all
got
of
it.
that. But when we are actually looking at what the Bible says, it's not teaching that sort of relationship.
Yeah. He's the Lord. We call him the Lord Jesus Christ, right?
Right.
The Kyrios, in Hebrew, Adonai. It means the Lord in the sense, I mean, the word means a Lord in the sense of a master over a household of slaves. It's not, there's no buddies there. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus is the Lord. And that's what Paul says. We used to be slaves of sin. Now we become doulothendos to theou, slaves of God, right? I mean, he's our Lord. Doesn't mean he doesn't love us.
Right.
But we're not buds. Right.
Exactly. We need to also be motivated by something to follow those 10 commandments too. And
right.
if you're buddy, your buddy's probably down there in the mud with you.
Yep.
If you're going to be honest.
Well said. I don't want Jesus to be my buddy.
No.
I need him to be my Lord, because he's the only one who could conquer sin. I didn't. I couldn't. Right. I still run back to it on the daily, and so do my friends. I mean, I need him right where he's at. Right. He's the Lord, and that's, thank God. Right. Thank God for that. Anyways. It leads, I said that there were 5 points. So those were the 5, that a father, shows, he teaches how he behaves with their mother. He teaches, the work ethic and to get out there and conquer and to look after your family. He teaches actual teaching, instruction, particularly, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the 4th one is that he, is the lone authority, teaches them about that aspect. And finally, he teaches them as the fixer, not as the friend. And they're key. And I've tried hard. There are more, to be sure. I've tried very hard to do that with my girls. And I'm clearly biased. I get it. But they're amazing. They're so awesome.
They are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a pleasure to know them.
Thank God it seems like it's worked. So I can say that not as a boastful thing, but just to say that, like, trust me a little bit on it. It works. I did say at the beginning, we can kind of end here, that there was a 6th one that's a bonus.
Yeah, what's our bonus?
I don't know
I've been waiting
about this one yet, but I think it's kind of something we got, a father will send his children off on their own adventure.
Interesting.
So every story.
Why do you say that?
Every story begins with, once the bad guy's posited and the need is posited and, the desires, internal, external desires, all that stuff. There's a guide that tells the hero on the journey about what he's got to do or what she's got to do. They leave the known world, right? So Harry Potter, he left the comfort under the stairs. As comfortable as that could have been. Frodo left the Shire, right? Luke Skywalker leaves Tatooine. I mean, that's just how it works, right? Katniss, that's a great one too. She was in, I forgot, Zone 12 or District 12, whatever it was. She got on the train and went into the big city. Yeah. They leave the known world. And that's when their adventure starts. And that's when the hero goes through all of the hardship to transform. And at the end of each of those stories, right, like Harry Potter becomes, the Jesus figure, and he gives his life and he becomes, a transformed wizard. And the same with Frodo, his was a little darker, but he was definitely transformed. Luke Skywalker, I am a Jedi, right? Katniss wins the games and becomes, the guide for the next one. You know what I mean? Like, there's transformation there. And so we have to help them, send them on their own journey. This is one of those things where, and I'm not judging. I'm really not judging. I'm a Semite, as I said, and in, my motherland, families don't leave. Like, they buy a building. And so mom and dad live on the first floor, and the son lives with his family on the second, and the other son on the third and fourth, and so on. I get that kind of stuff. But I sometimes see, where fathers and mothers are afraid, and rightfully so, to let their children go away to college or move to another state for a job or whatever it may be. It's becoming less and less. But, I mean, this is huge, I think. Let them go. I mean, my wife and I didn't blink when the oldest said she wanted to move to the East Coast. I mean, that's all the way across the country. And the other one wants to go all the way to the Pacific Northwest. I mean, they're literally in 2 opposite corners of the country. Didn't blink. I mean, yes, we miss them. And yes, we use Life 360 4 times, 5 times a day to make sure, that, of course, but we're glad they're out there because we sent them on their own journey, and they're incredible.
Well, and it's occurring to me that you can't necessarily predict what the world is going to be like in the future. And I think that's the other thing. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to have kids because what type of world am I sending them into? But if you prepare them properly with these steps that we've outlined, they're ready for any adventure that they're going to go on, and they're going to conquer it.
And they grow from those adventures. You know, true story. Now I'm picking on my oldest, who's a ferocious lion. I love this kid. I love both my kids so much. It's amazing. When she left, one of the first times she was a counselor at summer camp for the summer, and it was 4-week commitment. And Allie and I drove up to pick her up, and she saw us, and she had no problems. She did awesome. She's great. She's strong. She saw us and she cried. And I don't think it was tears of like, this was horrible. I think it was just the relief of, oh my gosh, I worked so hard for this last month. Their face means it's over and I get to go home and sleep. Yeah. But she cried. It wasn't tears of sadness or pain. It was relief. Last semester, as we're filming this, she's about actually one day away from finishing the current semester. But the previous one, she studied abroad. She was in Paris for the whole semester, and she went all over the world. And so we decided that we would go pick her up and bring her home. So the little one, Amelia and Allie and I flew over there to pick her up after the semester was over and bring her back. You know, we spent a week in Paris. It was great. And I was thinking when we got there to pick her up, when she first saw us, she would cry and be like, that same kind of release. Not even a little bit. She looked at us, quote, "What's up, peoples?" You know, like I said to my wife, I'm like, that's a different woman.
She's transformed.
Yes. So you could see even from camp to, I mean, and she was all over the world. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? But that adventure made us a nervous wreck, right? I mean, we were Life 360ing 4 times an hour, not a day at that point, you know. But it made us nervous because we love the kid. Obviously, we want her safe. But that transformation, she's so much stronger. It's like, so, I mean, I think it's okay. It's not even, it's preferable. It's good. Let them go on their adventure, you know. I told him too once, we were sitting outside, and I said to Amelia, the little one, I said, Amelia, you see that house over there? She says, yeah. I said, I want you to buy that house. And I said, Sophia, you see that house over there? She said, yeah, I want you to buy that house. And they're like, okay. I said, but don't you ever let what I want get in the way of your life. If your life takes you, you know, out in the world, go. And so what I was saying to them was, of course I want you next door. I mean, you're my kids. And then you're going to bring my grandkids, and they'll be next door. Oh, that would be great, right? But don't let my desires get in the way of your life. You have an adventure ahead of you. Go live it. Go do it. Yeah. You know? So anyways, that was the 6th one. I don't know if I'm right with that or not, but I mean, it's, you know, I'm definitely toying with it, experiment with it. It's a neat idea.
I'm sure there's more, Father Chris, too.
Yeah.
Like, these are 6 points, but I'm sure you have
10,
for sure. 20, 30.
I guess I could
points.
say this to kind of wrap it up. Most important, I guess, takeaway is go to the website and get that dinner table starter list. You'll find right away so many crazy cool things that start from those conversations. You'll be changed. Look, your kids are probably smarter than you. I know mine are. I learned a lot from them, and still am. You know, so get those questions. I mean, it's just there. So just click the link and we'll send it.
What's your favorite question that's on that list?
It's a good question. Now that you asked me, put me on the spot, I froze because I can't even remember what's on that list. But I like the questions that are, you know, what's the hardest thing you're dealing with or have ever dealt with? I like that kind of question. Even one, I don't know if we put this on there, but listen, my kid ambushed us. She came to us. All right, enough of your questions. I have one. I'm like, okay. She said, what's one thing that your parents did to raise you that you didn't do with the two of us? And what's one thing that you did? All right, that's a question, right? That's a thought-provoking question. I like that kind of stuff. They're open-ended, obviously. They're not like, how many times have you seen the Lakers play? That's a fixed number, right? It's not a convo. But when they're open-ended, usually what questions or sometimes the why, you know, mindset, they're good. So I like that kind of stuff.
It shows also that you are training them to ask questions, which ultimately helps them to be successful as well. Because you have to have that curious mindset, but also asking those questions helps you go far in life.
Yeah.
Start to learn about people.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you. I appreciate the time. I guess I can conclude us with this. Though I at no point am, you know, oblivious to my own sins and shortcomings, I feel like by God's grace, really, I've become a good father. And I can see the proof in those kids. They're not kids, my young women, you know. And I'm thankful to God for that. I'm thankful to my wife. who is the real rock. I'm thankful to the Lord God, because his word actually proves to be life-giving. Like we said in Genesis chapter 2, if you break my commandment, you will die, which leads us to the real message. The converse is true, that if you abide by it, it's life. And I'm thankful to God that he does what he says and that his word is of value. And so, I'm a better man. Those girls have made me a better man. And I think that if any one of our warrior saints out there really wants to find that kind of transformation in their own life, because look, there was a time in my life where I was a train wreck, right? If they want to find that transformation, it's not impossible. If I could do it, anybody can do it. It's true. And so, that's why we spend all our time on the academy doing what we do, is if people find themselves steeped in the word of God and living that crucifixional life and then apply it to fatherhood, these men will not be good fathers. They will be great fathers. They will no longer be normal. They will be exceptional, men who are creating exceptional people in the world. And so it can be done. I mean, I've seen it happen with countless people. Not to be silly. I mean, Deacon Greg now has, even a newborn. And his kids, I'm biased there too, but they're so fun. I'm like, want to bite
fantastic.
their cheese. Yeah, they're so great. So it works
They're a
if
joy
we
to
would
be
just
around.
do it, And so I encourage all of our guys to get on the way, man. Let's do it. Anyways, all right, great
Thank you,
stuff.
Father Chris.
Love you, beautiful people. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for letting me, rant and all this stuff. Join us, Orthros Liturgy on Sunday 9 and 10. As always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.